They're ready to go.
Good evening. Welcome to the special council meeting. Second opportunity to go at the operating budget. It is 6:30 PM and I will call this meeting to order. I will ask at this point for any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. Sorry, remember the number. 4010-5590 municipal assistance. I'm part of a couple of committees. Sorry, forgot the mic. I'm a part of a couple of committees, so I need to declare conflict of interest. It wouldn't be right to vote on something that would benefit those groups or not benefit them.
All right, thank you for that. Any other declarations? Thomas?
Just a quick note that when it comes to voting, in light of Councillor Chilcott's declaration, that we'll have to vote on the municipal assistance budget item separately, and then she'd be permitted to vote on the full budget.
All right, thank you for that. Before I call Lauren up to give this presentation, I just want to remind council this is our second opportunity at the operating budget. I also wish to set the stage that we have been dealing, the municipality that is, with, we've been struggling with, shall we call it, an unforeseen debt for 9 years. And this has impacted municipal expenditures and budget deliberations for quite some time. When it first occurred in 2015, it was reported to council that we would be looking at a succession of 10% increases followed by 4s. That never happened because staff dug deep, found efficiencies, and found a way to actually bring us in under those targets. And so we've done very well. 9 years later, I think we finally hit the end of the road of trying to find some of those layers of fat, so to speak, within the municipal system, and that puts us where we are today. So I also want to remind people that when this operating budget was first tabled and around the staff level, they were looking at a 22% notional levy increase. 17% of that is attributed directly to retirement of the Ojibwa debt. Again, staff have dug deep, looked at different reserves, and have been able to bring us to a budget in January at 11.37. Since that time, we've asked staff to go back and take another look to bring in the year ends, to normalize it, so to speak, and that sets the stage for this evening's discussion. So with that, I'm going to call on Lauren James to present report TR 1024. The revised draft 2024-2025 operating budget. Lauren?
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. At the January meeting, the motion from the council was to direct staff to bring forward a supplementary report on areas of potential cost savings in the items of discretionary functional areas in the 2024-2025 draft operating budget. This supplemental report adds to the original draft budget. And one thing to take consideration, the draft budget in January to this budget has all the year-end actual numbers as presented in the quarterly reports and as well as being audited by our auditors right now. A couple items have been normalized, which have been identified in the table. I can speak to each of the items individually, so that way council can understand. The first one, fees and surcharges. This is the POA. POA is expected to be very light again, unfortunately, with COVID normalizing and the county's POA cost structure coming back into normal. It's going to be a few years until we actually get back to our normal POA revenues. The next one is streetlights. Unfortunately, we're not able to fund it at 34,000 anymore. We have added streetlights and the cost of inflation has caught up. So we had to bring that up 6,000. The London MRF revenues are no longer applicable because the waste management program no longer exists. And that was normalized out into 23, as well as the provincial stewardship Ontario grants. They're no longer applicable. Staff did think there was some residual timing to that, but unfortunately with year end completing, we did receive our last stub payments in the end of fiscal 23. And we've also identified some areas where We can cut on grounds maintenance with application of some bathrooms locations. So these changes have actually increased our tax levy 1.18% or 68,000. Additionally, at the direction of the council request from the January report, we've identified some non-discretional expenses, one being the municipal tree program, one being the municipal assistance program, reducing the application of the bathrooms and other maintenance in parks, rec, and beach by deploying less toilets where strategically are not needed. So that's bringing that savings down. Short-term closure of the Marine Museum, both due to the timing of the enabling accessibility grant, as well as budgetary pressures, deferring the Port Burwell Ball Diamond and the Stratford Ball Diamond lights and accessibility. That is right, Port Burwell and Stratfordville has lights in the capital 10-year. East Pier rehab engineering work deferring it 1 year, and the Port Burwell washroom expansion engineering deferring it 1 year. I would advise against not deferring too many of these ones that need engineering done. If in the event we have a provincial or federal election in the next 18 months, we need to have these reports in our drawer to make these kind of grants, because generally when there's election time, these, what you would call non-core grants or options kind of get presented out there in the public as opportunity for grant applications. So council, at the request, and staff have brought forward some service level cuts, which are identified above, as well as some deferrals. We can either talk about the staff report, or if any of the council wants to talk about each of the individual departments' actuals to budget, we can go in either direction.
Okay, Lauren, I'm thinking we should probably address the items identified in the staff report, perhaps go through them one by
Yep.
one. Get council's feeling on what they're thinking about this, okay? So, you've, in the first table, there's nothing there other than you're suggesting it's gonna cost us $5,000 more for grounds maintenance.
Yes, but not
Yeah.
that one area for the cemeteries, we can't fund it for the 12 anymore. It's 17.
All right.
Some of our inactive need a little bit more maintenance and care, so that's the 5,000 increase there.
Okay. Then why don't we talk about the second table and start going through them one by one?
Okay. So let's go with the second table. Municipal tree program. Generally, we've spent rate close to the 5,000 on an annual basis. It has been well received in the community and the public. Council could take an option of doing a deferral or a pause for the year, if they so choose. It is not contractually obligated that we do the program this year. We are getting inquiries about when we're offering the program, so there is interest in the public. But again, this is a discretionary item that council could keep, retain, or remove,
Okay, the actual expenditure on the 2023 program?
just right around 4,800.
Okay, I thought I'd seen 3,800. All right.
Yeah,
thank you for
38.
that.
But we budget 5, so if we're under, we're under.
All right, what's council's thinking on that, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. We approved this program a while back. Have we ordered the trees?
We have not.
Okay.
Councilor Chilcott.
Thank you. I think this is one item that we can pause for this year. If we don't get trees in the ground this year, we can get them in the ground next year, and it's not gonna be that much of a detriment to anyone, I don't think.
Any other comments? Before we go too much further, I'm going to look to our staff who coordinates this. Do you see a downside, Steve?
Well, through you, your worship. Like Lauren said, it was a well-received program. One thing to consider too, unfortunately, I did reach out to Trees Canada. We do have a grant pending still as well. Unfortunately, mid-March was their cutoff line for application acceptance, and so I'm still waiting. I haven't heard on that. That'd be, a savior in this one if it was However, otherwise, council discretion.
So the application has been made to Trees Canada?
Yes, it was made back in early December, late
Thank you.
November. And, but the, letters weren't going out to mid-March for it, so.
What's the, what was the ask?
The program, off the top of my head, this was the edible tree, I forget how it's actually, but it was, the only one the municipality could actually apply for at this year was for edible trees, so it was gonna be for apples and pear trees around the township, so with any luck, maybe we'll get some.
Was there a matching component required? For
No,
the-
this was 100%. So it'd be a real good one to.
Fruit trees.
Mhm.
Okay. Well. If I would assume then if council is thinking that, they would just set aside the tree program this year, and if you are successful with that grant application, there's something. Something to consider. All right, Councilor Chilcott?
Is, assuming that we did pause this program and we did get the grant, we can bring it back because it's fully covered, right?
No. If we're talking about pausing the tree program. He's talking about a separate program supplementary too. So in other words, if you're gonna pause the $5,000, you're going to maybe only have access to the tree, the fruit tree
Okay,
program for this year. That's what he's telling
I
us.
thought he was substituting the fruit for the.
We don't, it's an unknown at this point. So. Okay. Any other questions or regarding the tree program? You want to just go through these one by one, like I said, and just get the information on it and then come back, make a decision, or do you want to make a decision as you go?
If you guys want to prioritize what's your priorities on the list, we could do that and go informational and then
Let's do
you
informational.
guys
work our
can
way
figure out
through
what,
it.
what your
Let's-
rankings are.
Let's
you wanna go
understand the
that way?
pros and cons.
Okay,
Through you,
Counselor Emerson?
and we're comparing this to this contingent, this reserve thing at the end, like this second part here. So how can we make a decision one by one if we're talking about?
That's why I'm asking if you wanted to make a decision or if you wanted to just get information first.
Yeah, information,
get the
because there's
information.
this contingency reserve transfer option that is either or part or some, so down here below.
Let's move on with the information items and Lauren,
Okay.
please.
so we've covered over the tree program. 3,800 close to actual last year, 5,000 budget. Municipal assistance, 7,000 is the budget ask. I'm gonna pull up last year's actual, so just bear with me. Yeah, the tree program last year was 3,853. Our actuals were
What did you say?
3,853 was the 23 actuals.
Yeah, I remembered the 3,800, so thank you.
Municipal assistance in 2023 was 5,300. In 2022 was 2,000. No municipal assistant grants were given out in 2020 or 2021 due to COVID.
We were 53 last year.
53, your worship.
Which festival did we not fund?
There was a late.
There was a late
There was a late
application.
application that was funded partially, which I kind of expect they would have application in for the whole.
Okay.
And expect the equal amount to Strathville, I would assume, for Watermelon Fest.
Okay,
Just to put things in perspective, generally there are municipal assistant grants have done for community events that have brought people into the community, have
Yep.
brought business and tourism economic spinoff. This is not one that I would caution to cut.
what is the there was another request for municipal assistance besides the festivals? And how much was the food bank request? Was it 16?
17, 16, 17. want to check that, clerk?
I don't have it in front of me, Lauren. I'll have to go digging for it while you talk.
Yeah, they had requested that, and I believe in December, and it was part of our budget package. I have, actually, I have the December budget open. I'll pull it up.
Okay. Any more questions on the assistance? Yep, Thomas?
The assistance request from the East Elgin Community Assistance Program came to council November the 2nd rather of last year, and their request was $3,000.
Any other
17 was-
questions or clarification on the municipal assistance? Yes, Councilor Emerson.
My opinion through you, Mr. Mayor, municipal assistance is part of the quality life and community building and I don't think for any area that should be taken out of the budget.
No, we're just for
Comment.
information for at this point, but I'll accept the comment. Just mark it down on the sheet. Arguably, all of these are for quality of life and community growth. Arguably. Any other comments on the municipal assistance side? Okay, grounds maintenance.
So on the grounds maintenance, it's the deployment of 3 less bathrooms. Them being in the Parks and Rec area of the municipality. So we would have, Parkville has 3, we'd have 2 deployed instead of that. So 3 less units deployed for the year.
Where?
For you, so I had a chat with our operator and they identified the 3 lease maintenance, less of use. Anyhow, Memorial Park, up top,
Mhm.
the Marine Museum in Port Burwell, parking lot, and the Stratfordville, one of the extras. These ones here, they didn't identify it was less. That was just added because we procure 2 of them here, and then there's actually a third. So that was more if we're gonna take one out then. But council did about 4 years ago, we added that extra one as well in council direction. So
Typically on the festival, when they're on, then you'll want those facilities there.
and that is the option I could also was gonna bring forward. If any of these spots or events, if there was an event that, it's more feasible to bring it in for a weekend than it is for the month as well.
Right.
So there's a $1,500 savings there, $1,300 savings. If we wanted additional.
Well, again, with respect to Memorial Park, there are some playground equipment down there a little bit. How much it's used non-festival time, it's hard to gauge.
Sorry, this was Port Burwell Memorial.
Orwell Memorial.
Yes, sorry about that. Up on top of the hill at the end of Strawn Street.
Washrooms are just down on the beach.
That's correct.
And it's not talking about taking any porta potties away from the beach.
Nope.
All right. Okay. And the Marine Museum, again. Yeah, I can see it. Is there a saving, Steve, if we have to bring in short-term rather than seasonal?
Yeah, like I said, if it's one event and we want to bring one porta potty in for a weekend, we're
Yeah.
talking $300. I've reached out in quite a way. There could be a couple of new operators coming online. Our contract is expired with the current one or is open for negotiation. So
Right.
last year we did a 1.5% increase for this year. But that's kind of an open-ended, so with any luck, we can tender and we're locked in at a cost rate now, but it's
Mhm.
not too late yet
$2,000 for a porta potty a year.
for yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more.
I would almost accept that recommendation. Yeah, well, in my mind, like, we're gonna talk, we'll yay or nay this in a little bit, but it's making sense. Of course, recognizing we're going to have to bring something in for April the 8th as well. For the, I realize that. Yeah, I get that. So if we're going to knock some of this out and have to bring some back in, just keep in mind, solar eclipse,
Oh, yeah.
we could have an influx of people coming. Harry's gonna talk to that someday.
I have, through you, Mr.
Yep.
Mayor,
Councilor
a question for Steve, because I was thinking about ways we could save some money on maintenance and whatnot. Could we, like adopt a no mow May for pollinators and stuff and just not mow the parks in May? That's like a trend all over the world. And then catch it all up. Like, how much money would that save?
I don't know if it would save anything, because you're talking about a huge, bunch of grass to deal with.
And Mother's Day at cemeteries,
Oh, yes.
which has got us into issues with
Mm.
reduced maintenance at cemeteries.
He is right there. It is very utilized in bigger cities, more or so along the roadways, more than they're doing it in their use of parks with the playgrounds, but that is becoming a,
Wow.
but service level.
Okay, anything else on ground maintenance? Does anybody have any further questions, comments? Lauren?
The only other thing to note, your worship and Stephen already just mentioned this, we probably need to reduce this back one more toilet so we can accommodate for these special event like the solar eclipse. Because if we're not budgeting for these one-off little events, we're gonna have cost overruns again too.
So where do you pull it from?
I'm saying maybe you take another toilet off the long-term rental and you take that savings.
Where?
I think if we're gonna remove one more, it would be one of the beach ones for the month of May. I wouldn't go into the summer months,
Okay.
but the month of May, we'd be able to get away with it. Or the shoulder month of September. That could make up the difference for that day.
Do you envision down the road that once the beach washroom facilities are upgraded, that we can remove some of these porta potties from the East Beach?
I think ideally that would be the full plan, because it is a costly expenditure.
Thank you for that. Just keep that in the back of your minds when we come up to talking about the engineering. Anything else on ground maintenance for anyone? Yep, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm guessing this is the time we ask questions. I don't know. I'm so confused. Steve, you mentioned May or September. Just curious, like, do we know if the weather's nice? Both of those months are busy, so I'm just curious as to,
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we've been down there those months. I've never had a complaint in May or September for the washroom facilities
Okay.
on file.
okay,
There still will be 2 porta potties plus the 5 additional stalls in the washroom. So, unfortunately, we can't predict, you're right. Can't predict May 2 for what the weekend would be, but someone may have to wait an extra 2 minutes or.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, again, just to clarify, we're talking about Memorial Park, Port Burwell Marine Museum, the one at the beach as the fourth. What was the third again? Stratfordville.
One of the
Yeah.
extras. One of the
Thank
extras
you.
here, your worship.
Thank you. All right. Moving on then with the museum.
Again, based on the council direction from the January report, we look at non-discretionary stuff. Unfortunately, the museum was identified as a non-discretionary. If we do a short-term closure of 2024 and it coincides with our enabling accessibility construction works, maybe it doesn't make sense to have the facility open and find some budgetary savings. The savings identified is about 14,000. We do have 2 pending student grant programs for part of the student grants pending. We haven't accepted or signed the agreements. They do subsidize a portion, but it doesn't subsidize the whole amount of the student's wage.
Appreciate that. So the impact you're talking about is about a 14,000.
Correct, your worship.
Comments? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, do we have a projected timeline for completion of the upgrade to the washroom?
Through you, your worship. Right now it's currently in the hands of the mechanical engineers. The design has been completed. However, they're still under review. Following that, and staff are happy with the repair or the plan. If the tender documents can be. Currently, we've already discussed that at this time of the year, chances are it would be a September repair,
So end of season.
end of season repair. If we are moving forward with continue with the Marine Museum being open.
Anyone else? Councilor Chilcott?
I just wanted to clarify. So if it's open, if the museum's open, it'll be September. If it's not open, it'll be when?
Well, we can go to tender and we wouldn't worry about it when they do it. It'd be an open contract to start ASAP.
And how long would it take to complete?
I unfortunately, I can't speak exactly for that, but the engineers, like it's a 3-week project, so. Potential to have it done before May 1st is really pushing it at this point.
Okay. Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
like for the economy of Port Burwell and one more reason why, or people would stay longer or use a restaurant or something. Might be unwise to have a short-term closure of the museum. I would think. Is one of the drivers, that's one less reason to visit town.
Mhm. Thank you for that. My thinking is that we're already on the hook, well, I shouldn't say on the hook. The building itself already requires 27,000 to keep it. So, yeah, I get your point.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And I think that you can still have a season. Even with the accessibility, even if there's 3 weeks interrupted, you can still have some kind of an outdoor season, so to speak.
It brings people to the town.
Yep.
It drives some economic activity. It's another one of these ones where
Mm-hmm.
it's discretionary, but it has a tourism and economic impact to it.
Okay. Any other discussion on the museum? Yep, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering, not to put staff on the spot, but I'm just curious as to the amount of use the museum has with the programs that they offer in the summer.
What's your attendance is what you're asking.
Correct, yeah, but they also have programs, correct? They have a. Sorry, not to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious.
Through your worship, I don't have the attendance number in my head. I'm sorry.
Could you maybe just speak to the programs that you offer during the summer?
Well, I would, actually. I'll have Jennifer speak to that because as the curator, that's her time spent and her organizational expertise. So Jennifer?
You just want to know what programs are involved. For the last number of years, we've been having the entire school show up in the June time period to take a
Yeah, you gotta get right to the mic.
right to the mic. Okay. Okay. All right. We have the entire school,
Yep.
grade kindergarten to 6, come out for a program each year, something different. We have the 6-week 1-hour summer program that we run in conjunction with the library. So that kids come in, do an activity, and we walk them down to the library where they do another one. We have activities always for Canada Day. And any other kind of function that we can come up with. We do have occasionally other groups that book for children's programs.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Any additional questions on the museum from anyone? Take us to the ball game.
Next one up is the Portborough and the Stratfordville Ball Diamond Lights.
Yeah.
This has been in our 10-year capital for a couple years now. Has been identified by staff. Lights do need to be worked on in both ball diamonds. The levy impact is 65, with the remaining coming from the Parks and Recs Playground Reserve. We do have some upward budgetary pressure if we did do this project, because some of our early quotes are gonna be pushing over the 200. So there's the opportunity to defer the project for a year. But eventually these lights in both diamonds will have to be replaced on a case-by-case basis. And I'll let the manager of Public Works kind of speak to the predicament of the lights.
Excellent. Yeah, so these were identified quite a few years ago. I wasn't involved, but as an insurance, the age of the towers. So this came in effect, if you guys recall, a report was brought to council a few years ago now. The cost was actually a lot higher that was budgeted price. Unfortunately, today's price is even higher. I've pretty much been told the 200 is gonna be tough. Just pending the base because of the material in the ground. There's a few options. However, for the last 3 years, we also haven't spent more than $1,000 in maintenance on them. Spring startup generally brings 1 or 2 elements. So the maintenance really is minimal at this point. I don't see any other safety issues with the towers themselves. They can't be climbed. They're stickered out and you can't climb them anymore. However, boom trucks used to fix them anyway. So that's kind of where they're standing right now.
There's no imminent hazard is what you're trying to
That's correct.
describe?
From what I can how I visually inspect them, and we do monthly actually inspections on the tower, the bases, just to kind of make sure nothing's showing. So we haven't started them up for 2024 yet, but I am anticipating at least a bulb or 2 to be out. So that's the common. Both diamonds are the same.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions, concerns? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. Clearly over budget, which is fine, but if we defer it this year, can we afford to defer it again next year? Because we know next year's budget's gonna be tighter than this budget. So my guess is if we defer it this year, it's gonna be deferred another year. Can we afford to do that?
Respectfully, through the mayor, deputy mayor, it'd probably be on 26. This would probably not be on the board on 25 with already pressures already.
Right?
That deferral would likely be a 26, and it won't even be thought about for 25 with all the other priorities ahead of it.
Any other questions?
Sorry, through you,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification. So Steve, you're comfortable with that? You don't see any immediate hazard
No, I
for
think
that deferral?
pushing forward, I think this would be a real easy one, actually.
Okay.
Being that maintenance is very minimal.
Thank you.
Okay, additional comments? Concerns? Let's talk about the East Pier rehab.
Your worship, so the East Pier rehab, this is part 1 of part 2. This is the engineering works. So if in the event, let's say there's a OTF grant we can apply for, or a community outreach grant, or some sort of non-core grant program provincially and federally, by having this in the drawer ready, we could have an application ready to go for either fiscal 25 or the first part of fiscal 26 by having this ready, designed, and costed out. There is very much advantageous to having at least either the East Pier or the bathroom somewhat together, so we at least have one in the drawer. And generally, it's good philosophy to have at least something ready, so we're not missing out on grant programs and eligibility as comes available.
Okay, either you or Steve can speak to this. we're talking about essentially the paved portion of the pier at this point. Or are we talking about the whole pier with something?
No, through your worship, you're correct. This is the paved portion on the north end. The engineer costs pretty much have to cover the engineer design work, load testing,
Mhm.
core testing. So there's a little bit involved. We haven't locked in exactly where that would be this year on costing. So however, this is just for that north end.
Okay. Any questions? Counselor Chilcott?
Thank you. Lauren, you mentioned being able to apply for grants if we got this engineering done. And you mentioned certain grants. Are they 100% grants or are they something we're gonna have to match?
Sometimes, through your worship, to the counselor, they can range anywhere from 33 cents on the dollar to 100 cents. It all depends what the program, criteria, the timeline, if it's shovel ready. Generally with these provincial and federal programs, they want to spur economic activity. So let's say hypothetically, we go into a soft U recession coming up the next 6 months to a year. There could be advantageous to have these shovel ready soft projects for applications to spur trades and economies. This has been the ammo of provincial and federal governments for the last 20 years to have these kind of things there to get employment back up, to stimulate the economy. The CEO can speak to it a bit more, but this is not something we will not want to have in the drawer already. We always need to have one or two of these things in the drawer so we can make an application.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question either of you, Thomas, or Steve, or Ed, anyone in the room here who might be more familiar. Once the engineering's done, how long is it valid for?
Through your worship, that's a very good question. I can't answer that exactly. Talking to Spreet's associate, when we were talking last year about this, the biggest thing is the load and the condition of the pier underneath. So really, until we find out, if we find out we're 80%, factor, and we're only going to lose 2% a year on the pilings underneath of it, then this design's going to last for as long as we want.
All right, now take it away from the pier, and if we're speculating, say, the washroom expansion, once the engineering's done, how long is that valid for?
That engineering, both cases, it's really just the drawing.
Yeah.
The tender work will obviously come before we decide to do the project, so.
Okay,
But
that's, just wanted to know, like, because if we're considering doing this, and then it may be a few years down the road before we can actually exercise it and use it and take advantage of it, is it still valid? That's what I don't want to waste dollars here. Okay. I was just putting it in layman's terms. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Lauren, you make reference to having some stuff in the toolbox, some of these documents, and do we have any in there at this time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, with respect to non-core at this time, we do not. However, with respect to core, we do have the Eden Pump House, which is in the works with CJDL. That report is coming to council on Thursday, and we're asking at that time for support for a grant application because it's pretty much as close to shovel ready as we currently have.
Another one would be your stormwater.
The stormwater is a little bit different. We have the master drainage plan, but we do not have engineering for the individual phases, which makes the project less shovel ready. However, it's our largest capital project right now.
And as for roads or other linear infrastructure, we have that identified in our roads needs study in our 10-year. So it's a matter of utilizing that, but generally that is utilized by OSIF and gas tax funding, first two. So it's more like, another enabling accessibility fund or something that has an off year and they bring back it and there's an opportunity that it's not oversubscribed. Problem is some of these programs to get oversubscribed and we're not able to make an application to begin with.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a
Councilor.
question on the logic of it. So if the logic is to have these shovel ready in case a grant comes, how come that same logic doesn't apply to Lighthouse?
It does. These have been scheduled, the others haven't.
Just curious.
Yeah.
So just to clarify that through the counselor, 2 years ago, we had made application twice for the Marine Museum.
Mhm.
The third kick of the can, we're finally successful. We had to have that ready each time. That was the last non-core thing that we had ready in the toolbox. And you're right, counselor, if there is a heritage fund coming up or whatever the need,
Mhm.
we need to have it ready. There's no doubt about it.
I think just to be more precise, you go back on the 10-year capital plan, you'll see that the East Pier and the washrooms have been scheduled on there for quite some time. It's just that the lighthouse never was. It came up last year. It just hasn't made the 10-year capital plan.
I guess would be a matter of priorities and rate of decay, if you ask me. Right?
You tell me.
I don't know.
Neither
That's
do
what
I.
I'm saying.
It's still standing, isn't it?
So was the pier,
Yep.
you know?
Any other comments on the pier engineering? This thing keeps moving. Counselor Chilcott.
Thank you. How long before we have to do the pier?
I don't know.
No, you're right. At this point, we have nothing saying that we need to do it. I can honestly say, we do have rebar showing along the edge. We do have decay along the edge. The asphalt top isn't in, it's not crumbling to the point that we have liability issues. That's the food for thought I can give you.
Mhm. So to characterize future structural, but more aesthetics.
Like the term, it needs rehab.
Pardon me?
It needs rehab.
Rehabilitation. Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's base or small, it needs rehab. And the engineering assessment will tell us how much rehab it requires to.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns on that? All right, take Deputy Mayor.
So, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So just for clarification, if we remove that from this budget, is the recommendation to defer it till next year?
That one be 25. The reason why is if we're gonna defer either both of PR 11 and FA 09, then you have to have at least one, if not both, in next year's budget, because you're sure gonna need something in that tool chase for a grant. You cannot have another year and kick the can, and then a grant comes along, and you guys are kicking yourselves for not having something to make application to. So it will be in next year's budget, and it'll put more pressure on the levy next year. But we have to have one of the two there, or else there's no application. And we miss out on grants. Which means we missed out on money to bring back to the community, federal and provincially coffers.
Thomas.
Just a quick note, Mr. Mayor, that with respect to the East Pier rehab, that the intent was that the engineering be done this year and the actual work, the engineering work happen in 2025. If we were to defer the engineering, then the physical work, which is, I believe, about $450,000 in the budget, would be pushed until 2026. Pushing that big item a year off allows for the potential deferral of the East Beach rehab, the East Pier rehab and the Port Burwell Beach washroom expansion engineering to both be pushed to 25, and it's still net relief on the levy because the $450,000 that is allocated for the physical pier rehab is being pushed to 26 from 25. You end up with a net $300,000 relief on the levy. So we can do both engineering next year. And it saves us about 5% on the levy doing that.
You defer it to one more fiscal tax year.
Yes. Well, that's for 24. We're talking about 2025, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We were gonna move on, talk about is talk about the beach washroom
Mhm.
engineering.
Similar mindset. It's been our 10-year. This is coming up to the year that we identified to do the engineering and then to do the work in 25, 26. It can be deferred, but we gotta do the engineering next year, so that way we have something ready to go for our grant. And yes, there is some operational savings that would be created by having these improvements and expansion done, which were identified with some of the bathroom and some other stuff, and probably reduce some of the service level constraint and complaints that we get down there. And it's a high traffic area. It drives a lot of activity. It's one of our jewels of the municipality. And it needs some attention, but we could defer for a year and then start to do the engineering in 25 and the works in 26. And if we get rid of the Ojibwe debt in 25, maybe there's some of that money that can be repurposed. So the pain's not that much in 26. Now you have that money to play with.
Okay, Councilor Chilcott.
I was just gonna ask about, what the, what the renovations or what the build is gonna entail, like what is needed and what is a want on that expansion? You know that?
No, I think we were, the idea was to bring the engineers in. And so this year I have in the works to do pedestrian counting. So we're gonna try locking in a better number of day-to-day use. There is devices out there for quite, well, they're pretty cheap little items, to try getting a better number what's on the beach. We do have some high level numbers from the vendor that's down there. They've done their own beach counting, so I do have some, numbers. However, obviously it's gonna come down to a price point that we're gonna want to spend with, amount of stalls. So right now we know we're utilizing 3 other stalls regular. So if we want to go 3 stalls or we want to double that and go 6 stalls, obviously that's going to be the big issue at this point, but that's something the engineer is going to be working with us on with the design.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Emerson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, excuse me, is there any impact on meeting accessibility requirements, or like as far as, what's required by the provincial government and the timeline if we deferred that?
In terms, the current washroom already does meet accessibility.
Yeah, that's correct. So currently with the one extra porta potty and then the stalls that we have in there, we're currently meeting the needs anyways at this point. So
I look at it down the road that we get this done, then we can eliminate the porta potties up. That's right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. So, my thoughts. Okay, so we've gone through, any more questions on the beach one or the washroom, excuse me? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. If we do the engineering this year, then I just want to understand the projected process here. We do the engineering this year so that we have that information in our toolbox, then we apply for grants. But if we're not successful for grants, then when are we looking at actually doing the work?
So through your worship, Deputy
26?
Mayor, let's say we do FAO 9 this year, we keep it in the budget. We get the engineering done. We keep it as a levy placeholder in the 2025. We move hypothetically the East Pier rehab engineering 1 year back, take that placeholder out. You could make an application in 25 for the Portborough washroom. And then potentially if there's a follow-up year, or there's another grant where we can take a kick at the can, you could do the East Pier rehab in 26. So you could have an application for each year.
Okay. Okay, any more questions regarding that table?
And as the CAO indicated, there is nothing more in our 24 and 25 that would kind of fall into this category in other departments for grant applications.
Okay, are we at the point then to go through and query people? What do you want from a discretionary point of view? What you want to postpone or defer, or what you want to keep in the budget? Are we at that point? Does everyone have a
We-
fair understanding of what's being talked about?
Yeah,
We're not at the reserve yet.
no, but I don't want to say yay or nay or anything till I understand this contingency reserve transfer option first, so it can compare and contrast, if you please.
Lauren, you want to take us down through that?
Yep, and I can walk
Please.
you right through that. So, how this report was created was, we've got the normalized stuff in the first, chart. Can't escape those. Those are reality. They have to be normalized in. The next chart was, discretionary service level and capital programs to defer, cancel, or pause, which brings down the levy 222,000. If council wanted to bring the levy back up to 9.9, they could repurpose some of that money in the savings and put it into a contingency reserve for situations where culverts go out, we have road issues, weather events, or other equipment failures in the municipality. We don't have much in some of those contingency reserves, so it's kind of prudent to put a little bit back there. We have 12 months. 12 months from now, we'll be sitting and dealing with Ojibwe's debt. So we don't have much safety net other than existing reserves. So it was just an idea of, if we're gonna par back, maybe putting some money away into a contingency watershed, it's not a bad idea. And that's the only reason why it's there, Counselor Emerson.
All right, now you're assuming that based on just the reserve transfer option, you're saying you take the 222,000 discretionary complete off, takes you from what level to where?
So it takes you down 3.866 on the levy from the proposed. And then you'd repurpose that money over
You didn't give me a starting point. Are we 12.5 or where are we?
12.6.
12.6, take you down 3.8. All
Correct.
right, and then add in something. You're talking about 71,000 back in.
One
through a
point,
contingency.
basically 1.1.
1.1. All right, so that's if you wanted to do away with any of those discretionary items. That's what that contingent.
I'm sorry, I still don't understand.
Okay, take it through it, Laura.
Okay,
One step at a time, please.
the January budget meeting, council's motion was to come back with a list of non-discretionary cuts or items that can be removed. If council wanted to go à la carte and remove all the discretionary items in the second chart, we would effectively get 2.66 of tax levy reduced. Staff then encouraged council to put some of that 2.66 back into a contingency to deal with areas where you have road impacts, water impacts, storm impacts, or other that we cannot escape, and that is basically an unfinanced liability that naturally does happen. When you look at the reserve listings and you look at some of the things that happened in 23, we experienced 4 of these type of events. We don't have much buffer, and we have 12 months remaining until the Ojibwe debt maturity comes up. Staff are just trying to put forward a prudent plan, so that way there's some safeguards. And we're also looking at this from a black and white point of view, of these are non-discretionary items, and if you guys wanted to go à la carte and remove every one, this is the effective cost savings.
These are discretionary items.
Correct.
Okay. So. Okay,
Well, this contingency reserve transfer, is that a different deal than taking the discretionary thing out? Because up there, it's like 8.3% and this is 9.9.
Thomas, please.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, so the contingency reserve transfer to consider the packaging of, say, $71,000 and putting it into the operating budget to buffer from these in-year expenses requires council to remove from the budget most, if not all, of the proposed cuts that have been put before it tonight. But that will allow a 9.9 levy that will allow 71% or $71,000 in a contingency reserve transfer. But we would be effectively pulling out, so net on that, about $151,000 of levy costs that are being deferred for the year. And the remaining 71,000 get repackaged. But it requires the $222,000 worth of cuts. Now, if council does not want to do the cuts in the full amount, then we can have discussions about what that entails. That might mean a lesser contingency transfer.
No contingency.
No contingency
Or-
transfer.
Or no contingency transfer, or it's simply a higher levy impact than 9.9%. It's provided as an option in case there's a middle ground and council is interested in having that 2024 buffer, because like the treasurer said, there may be some events that come up over the course of the year that we can't predict. And because our budget is very lean, that we can't find a way to insulate it within the budget without running a deficit. And we don't want to be in that position in 2024, recognizing that we're going to be up against additional pressures in 2025.
And to remind council, we had an operating deficit of 163 last year, with 4 of these said incidents causing us a lot of financial harm in multiple budgets and multiple departments.
Okay. Just doing some rough math in my own head, trying to get this sorted around. And let's kick off the discussion on discretionary items right now. If I'm listening and judging from what council reaction during the discussion, just bear with me. I think there's an argument that we made to pause the tree program, to take the advice on the grounds maintenance in order to marshal those Jimmy Johns in when you need them, but take 4 out. I'm hearing that staff are comfortable, or at least not overly concerned if we deferred the ball diamond lights for another cycle, perhaps 2. And I'm thinking that if I'm hearing correctly, and I think what's the more germane and perhaps the more beneficial project to keep, if you're going to keep one this year and probably do engineering the next year on another one, is you keep the beach washroom and defer the east pier. Yeah. Okay, if I've done that and I've done the math, it looks to me like you're looking at somewhere around 126,000. All right. Now, if you want to take something further and say, all right, now take the staff's advice and say, maybe we should contribute something back to the contingency reserve. You could think about maybe not the full 71, but half of the 126. Or shall we talk? Let's start right here with the savings. Is there agreement around that? Councillor Chilcott.
So basically, if we're at 126 and we've already eliminated that 71,000, we don't have that. for
It's
the
not
year.
in there, no.
We couldn't make, because we've already taken that away from the 222,000.
Nope, no, that's the next step. See, if we took the full 222,000.
Take 71 off.
All of them up, and they're saying take 71,000, put it back into a contingency reserve. That's your plan.
Right.
That
But we're
was an
not
option.
there.
That was the plan if we took
Yeah.
all discretionary.
All
That's right,
We're at
all.
126, so that 71 isn't even there to get into a discretionary.
Seems to me 126,000 is still greater than 71.
The 71 was coming off of 222,000.
I'm
Now
not
we're
talking
coming off of
about,
126.
I'm not talking about impact on the levy or anything. I'm just talking about dollars that become available. Right? They were talking about taking the full 222,000 out,
Correct,
taking 71,000 from that back,
correct.
okay?
Now
That
we've
would give
only
you
got
9 point.
126 out.
Yes,
What's gonna go back?
that's question before council. So the question before council is, first of all, are these the 4 items you're willing to give up this year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I had a wish list, I would take the pier off and add, because we only need like 20,000 for the lighthouse. I would take the pier off and drop 20 back in. That's what I would do.
Keep everything else, you mean?
No, No, like what you're suggesting, except if we're gonna take the pier out, we should maybe add the lighthouse.
Well, they're okay, let's talk about the list first. Then we'll talk about what you want to do.
No, I'm in agreement with the list you said.
Okay. Yeah. So am I. Lauren?
I think it's time to update council where we're at financially and what the current levy projections are before we go further. So incorporating the original normalized expenses in the first chart and the items identified in the second, it is actually a $58,000 levy improvement net. You have to take the top one and the bottom one.
Why don't you say increase? Because when you say improvement, if I were talking, I would say you're taking me down 58 grand.
I
You're
am
not.
taking-
You're eating,
No, I'm taking it down 58,
okay, from doing what?
adding the normalized 68 at the top, plus the reductions identified in the non-discretionary.
The four,
The-
all right,
That's 58.
all right.
And if we incorporate that, we're at 10.33% right now.
All right,
Now, from this point on, you guys can pick à la carte what you guys want to go further, or you want to go what?
so you're saying we have,
10.33% with the normalized expenses, which
Yep.
we cannot escape, plus the items you guys have identified for cuts.
The 126.
The 126,
right,
Okay.
that's the
Okay.
58.
so we don't have. So that doesn't incorporate any contingency transfer.
Nothing.
So it depends, where you wanna land. We got you down a point from, January, although,
That's appreciated. I was shooting for 10, but.
Yeah.
you know,
I know, but things went up in the meantime.
Yeah.
It's. When we talk percentages, it's really tough to even compare yourself with your neighbors, because you don't know what that is. For us, we know that this is gonna be somewhere around 200 now. 190?
198, 202. How do we,
190.
how do we compare to Norfolk? Our increase is lower.
Lower.
How do we compare to a place like Tilsonburg? Lower. We're higher than Malahide. We're not gonna be like Central at 0, but our levy, if you look at also the mill rates to the assessment, we're middle of the pack in Elgin. We are more than Norfolk. We're middle of the pack in Oxford. And we are less than Elmer, less than Tilsonburg. And we are slightly above other comparatives like Southwest Oxford and other ones that are slightly smaller than us. Again, our assessment weighting is also impacting our levy. 78% of our levy is residential. The next big class is farm. And until MPAC resets the book, we're gonna have an imbalance too.
Council Chilcott.
Thank you. Lauren, did you, I know it's just a little amount, but every bit counts. The ground maintenance, did you increase that to 8,000 for the extra washroom being removed?
Yeah, I did not add that to 8 because you're gonna need to repurpose that too for all the odds and sods events like
Weekends
Right,
and
okay.
stuff.
those. So we're taking one less toilet and repurposing that money around.
Sorry, thank you.
So only 6 on that number.
Yes, please, Dan.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Lauren, just help me understand the math a little bit. It says on your original draft consideration, it was 11.34%.
That is correct.
And now if we take those 4 items out, my math shows it's 2.18%.
Counselor Froze, on the first page on my report, I've got normalized expenses and revenues.
You had to add 68.
We're not gonna be able to realize those.
Not 1.18?
I can't do
Yeah.
anything about those. Those are,
Well, weren't they there the whole time?
No,
No.
they were on the draft budget. And when we completed the year end, I reached out to both my contacts at Stewardship Ontario, Ontario, and with the London MRF. There is no more residual remaining funds. We got everything in 23. Those programs and those grants no longer exist. The POA program is nil at the county. It's been nil for a while. And we can't cut the inactive and do the maintenance on a couple cemeteries like we used to. That's it. It's those three are 2 revenues that don't exist. County revenue doesn't exist at the POA, and we cannot fulfill that maintenance at our cemeteries that we maintain.
So
Everything else, if you go through the rest of the budget, which has the year-to-date actuals, our budgets are normalized to the year-end actuals, and we've asked department heads to basically curb it to inflation or less. over 23 actuals. So they have their own hard work to do too. This unfortunately, and I'm going to say this again, your worship, this is 9 years of servicing a debt. And we're trying to do a giant balloon payment. When you start thinking about all that money to service that debt, plus the balloon payment, your mind will blow up when you realize how big the number is that our taxpayers and our ratepayers have paid to service a debt that doesn't provide core infrastructure to any residents.
Councilor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lauren? What's the chances if we ask the department heads to help us get below 10? And we can get there.
Counselor Rose's comment. First draft, I asked for more. Second draft, they gave me some reductions. When we came back with the revisions after the January meeting, department heads already told me there was nothing more they could do, and what they gave was bare bones. And they have exposure in their budgets to unfunded issues.
Goes back to the,
It's a devil you don't know and a devil you do know. And with every municipality, you always have how much financial risk do you want to cover or how much do you want to have not covered?
no, it goes back to the comments I tried to make at the beginning of the session. For 9 years, staff have been finding these efficiencies where they can. And I think they're, we're there. Sorry.
Well, there's no sorry through you, Mr. Mayor, and to Lauren, like, I think this has been a useful exercise to see where we're at, and so we can have better clarity, in that debate versus ratepayers and needs.
Yep.
And I'm really thankful, Lauren, to bring this information forward. I actually really am.
Oh, so thank you for that. And I agree. I think staff have done a tremendous job here. Councilor Chilcott.
Thank you. I think part of the thing is we get caught up on the percentages, and our percentage at 10% is less than what it is for someone else at 6%. So we really need to be doing a dollar to dollar comparison rather than a percent to percent, because 10% for us could be $200, but 6% for Southwest Oxford could be 6.3% hike in Norfolk is $216.
Right.
Or sorry, I better say that in the mic. 6.3% tax hike in Norfolk is $216
Per household.
and per household. And here it's 10% is 198. Is that what you said?
198 to 202.
Well, to put it in perspective, that's 216 on a 240,000 assessment. Ours is on a 250,000 assessment. The average household in Brant, I understand, is over 315.
Mhm.
They passed it last week.
The reason why we use
So it really
250,
should be dollar to dollar. It's
And-
percentages.
Dollar.
just so council understands, the reason why we use 250 is the roll book is still sitting on 2016 values. So until we reset the value at a normalized rate is,
Mhm.
you could argue that 250 should be 275. We've used 250 consistently. We still have a number of properties that are below 250 that are selling for 2 and 3 times face value on the real estate. So there's an imbalance too.
But it really doesn't matter. If it's $100,000, for every $100,000, it's $100 extra. Then people can compare. If it's $100 for us and it's $200 for somebody else, at least you know what's happening. But when you put the percentages in there, a lot of times we don't do the calculation and we don't compare it what the cost is.
It's true, but on the other hand, I don't live in Norfolk, so I don't really care. I care
Right.
about the financials that are happening here,
Here's something to
You're
put-
absolutely correct.
right?
So it goes back to the old adage, don't worry about what the neighbor's doing, farm your own place.
That's right.
just so council understands. Our projected tax levy for the whole year will be $6,336,401.67. 23% of that represents the balloon transfer to Ojibwe plus the current debt servicing of principal and interest. 23% of our entire tax levy to service that.
No, I think council has a good appreciation for it, and I think it's something that a majority, or at least some of our residents do understand. We have a goal in mind, and I think council still has that goal of reaching the March 25, to get us out, get that monkey off our back. and create some opportunities for BAM. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. For FAO 9, Lauren, the expansion and engineering, is any wiggle room on that amount? Or no? It, like, it's a $75,000 placeholder, right?
I would recommend we don't, because it's just a Class D estimate. We don't know what that is. For sure.
Okay. No, I'm just wondering, just,
I would remind council, a lot of the items in our 10-year capital, other than the first year or two, they're basically very tightened. Steve, Ed, Thomas, myself, and the department heads will try to get as close to quote or estimates from our engineering firms we work with. But until we get to the baseline, it's a ballpark number that we're based on similar projects and what we feel based on similar work that's out there that we've done. But like it said, it's a placeholder. It really is a placeholder.
Okay. Before we start getting into the formal motion stuff, and I think we've got consensus around the table of where on the discretionary item. Now, is there any appetite? Do you want to dig back in and raise it a little more to put a contingency aside, or do you want to just leave it alone? We do have some reserves, but the point is if the proverbial it hits the fan, we might have to go to short-term borrowing. If we get-
we need to do.
That's what, all right.
I would also remember or caution council is last week we brought forward the year-end reserve positions. Our reserves aren't that bad. So let's say we have a culvert fail or a road come out or Mr. Adams or some has to come up and because we have an in-year expense. We do have a few expenses and a few reserves that are still open. I would caution council after they approve the budget that they only look at what's truly needed for the remaining of the year. Now, let's say a grant application comes forward. There's money on the reserve board that you could put a motion to repurpose it and say, hey, I want this moved from here, let's go. But I would also caution that it makes no sense to hamstring any more of the levy unless we know we don't have anything on the chessboard to use, and we still have funds on the board to use. And I'd also remind council that next year's levy is even more challenging than this year's. So keeping those pieces on the board is crucial to get us through to March next year. We're trying to survive the next 12 months.
All right. Any further discussion on the budget? It hasn't been an easy one, and I think I do accept Lauren's cautionary note. It's gonna get tougher next year. Sunnier days ahead. Let's keep the wheels on the bus. Thomas, you're gonna have to go through this in a couple of different motions.
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. But given that we've been out on this road an hour and 15 minutes, can we have a 5-minute recreation break while I craft some motions and then we'll get back to it?
I was going to just let Lauren out, say an hour after his 15-minute request. But yeah, okay, let's take a 5-minute break or whatever we need. We're in recess.
Like this.
Mayor unmuted. Thank you. Welcome back. Thomas, you have some motions for us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So recognizing that Councillor Chilcott has identified an interest with respect to the municipal assistance item, I'm breaking this up into three proposed motions. We're going to start with municipal assistance first, so we can make it explicit that she did not vote on this particular item. So we need a mover and seconder for the motion that the municipal assistance program remain in the 2024 operating budget at an allocation of $7,000.
Okay, would be moved by Deputy Mayor Weisler, seconded by Councillor Emerson. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank
Okay.
you.
The second motion would clarify the either removals or deferrals that council has identified with respect to the 2024 levy supported budget. Proposed motion would read that the municipal tree program be paused for 2024 and the $5,000 allocation be removed from the 2024 operating budget, and that grounds maintenance be reduced by $6,000 in 2024, and that the following capital items be deferred: East Pier Rehab Engineering until 2025, Fort Burwell Ball Diamond until 2026.
Just to clarify, that includes any rehabilitation of the ball diamond lights that were scheduled in Stratford.
Yes, that would be the capital item.
Yes. I just want that to be clear.
Both ballparks.
Both parks. All right, having heard the motion, do we have a mover and seconder? Councillor Emerson will move. Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Mayor, the final item with respect to this budget would be that report TR 1024 regarding the 2024-2025 operating budget revised draft be received for information, and that the 2024 operating budget be approved with a 10.33% tax levy increase equivalent to a notional increase of $593,300, and staff be directed to bring forward the 2024 tax rate bylaws.
Okay, do we have a mover and seconder for that? You can't.
No.
You can speak to it after I get a mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Weisler? Councillor Emerson? Lauren, you have something to add?
I just need to make sure that the clerk has the motion that council has also approved the normalized expenses in the first table as well.
You didn't add that to the motion when we discussed it, Lauren. Okay, give me 30 seconds.
Then we'll see if we can get an amendment.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, motion would read that report TR 1024 regarding the 2024-2025 operating budget revised draft be received for information, and that council approve the normalized expenditures added in report TR 1024, and that the 2024 operating budget be approved with a 10.33% tax levy increase equivalent to a notional increase of $593,300, and staff be directed to bring forward the 2024 tax rate bylaws.
Okay, going back to the original mover. All right, you'll accept that. And seconder? All right, so it's moved by Deputy Mayor Weisler, seconded by Councillor Emerson. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Brings us to the confirming bylaw. That confirming bylaw number 2024-009 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Chilcott and Deputy Mayor Weisler, all in favor? Carried. Before adjournment, again, I want to thank staff for your diligence and accommodating council, bringing forward the 2 months between. Quite a lot of work into this. Senior staff as well, thank you very much for accommodating us. And for council, this has been tough. It's been a bit of a road, but I think this is still the best step forward for the municipality. All right, so having said that, I'll look for an adjournment motion that council meeting be adjourned at 7:56 PM. Mover and seconder, Councillor Froese. And Counselor Chilcott will second. All in favor? Before I declare it carried, maybe we'll stick around for a little longer just because it's Lauren's birthday. Okay, it's carried.
Happy
We are
birthday.
adjourned and happy birthday.